Hello, chess friends, and welcome to your Out of Chess channel, and welcome to another breathtaking game from the computer chess rating list website, the popular CCRL. We have here Clarity against Stockfish 16 in an amazing Berlin defense of the Rui Lopez. And the cool part is that again we'll see the fish playing with the black pieces in the Spanish opening. We'll want to see, of course, new opportunities, new sidelines, new variations that are possible in the Spanish opening. But I think it's again a game that covers every stage of the chess game. We'll see great opening theory, great middle game tactics, but also a very spectacular chess endgame in which Stockfish will have a rook versus two minor pieces with some pawns on the board. So very complicated endgame. So put your seatbelts on and enjoy in a beautiful gameplay by Clarity against Stockfish 16. So with the white pieces here, the Clarity engine open with move e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to b5. The Rui Lopez, the Spanish game is on the board. Knight to f6, Berlin defense. We have now kingside casting, bishop to c5, which is now the so-called Beverick variation. And now after move c3, we have now the so-called Tukertort gambit. With the move c3, we're preparing, of course, to break and enter with the move d4. And now black could maybe react in this with this line, knight takes e4, and then after queen to e2, actually you're pretty much forced to play bishop takes f2, rook takes f2, knight to f2. Is now still, I would say, a complicated game for both sides. Has been played many times with also a great success for black. I see two winning games for black in this particular line. So black gained decent compensation for the last two minor pieces, gained some pawns, but still I would say here the position could crack around the square e5. So still I would say a very risky sideline of this variation. So after move c3, that's why kingside castling played by the fish, d4 breaking in the center. We have a bishop to b6. If you take here d takes e5, then we can also pick up this one, knight to e4, and the knight is well placed. Then if maybe the knight gets attacked, we have d5, we can fix it. After something like e takes d6, knight to d6. So not I think here a complicated game anymore for black. After bishop to b6, that's why bishop to g5 by the Clarity engine, h6, bishop to h4, and now d6, keeping everything now compact in the center of the board. If you play here bishop takes c6, then after d takes e6, you could maybe try to trade off the pawns here, but after knight takes e5, queen takes d1, rook to d1, this one is hanging, the pawn on f2 is hanging, the b file could be useful here for black, maybe attacking this one. The black is continuing the game with the bishop pair on the board, so not an optimal line, I think I would here for black. So after move d6, that's why queen to c1 was played by Clarity. Very often played sideline, also very popular to control further the dark squares, and also maybe in some lines to include the rook on the d file, and if something clears, then the queen could be endangered. After queen to c1, we have queen to e7, rook to e1, and now Stockfish plays a theoretical novelty move that has never been played so far in chess history. In chess history, bishop to d7 has been played, but also bishop to g4. Stockfish plays now a6, challenges now this other bishop. We have bishop to a4, and now bishop to a7. Stockfish simply retreats. h3, we have bishop to d7, covering further the knight on c6 here, and now the real fun starts. Now Stockfish and Clarity are going into a really epic tactical sequence. We have now d takes e5, knight takes e5. You see the queen is a little bit overloaded to the defense of the bishop on d7. Clarity takes, knight takes e5. We have now queen takes e5. We have bishop takes f6. It seems so that black is losing a piece because the knight is not protecting anymore the bishop. But after bishop to d7, now Stockfish grabs this pawn and also can afterwards pick up the rook on e1. And okay, after queen to e1, let's stop now and evaluate the position. White has 6 pawns on the board. Black has 7 pawns on the board. Has also the rook for 2 minor pieces. So still, I would say a very complicated endgame, but many problems still white has, I think, in the position. White didn't develop so far the pieces here. The bishop is a little bit loose on the board, so white has to search for better squares for the light square bishop. So white will lose, I think, 2, 3, even 4, 5 moves maybe in order to regroup, in order to have, I think, a solid setup. So here after move queen to e1, Stockfish notices, of course, that the rook on a1 is not participating in the game, so that's why Stockfish is trying to break and enter immediately with a beautiful move d5. If you take here, e takes d5, then we attack the bishop, then we attack the queen drops back, we pick up this one. As I said, the lack of development is something that bothers now white in the continuation of the game. You see, you cannot play there, you will probably have to play knight to a3, but then the rook is coming, maybe this other rook can be included into the game, so very unpleasant game then for white for sure. So that's why for d5, e5, we have queen to e7, bishop to a4, and now b5, kicking with the bishop, putting more pressure against this pawn on e5. We have knight to a3, rook from a to d8, protecting now first of all this one. We have knight to c2, and now finally queen to g5. Great move here by the fish. Stockfish is not trading off the queens immediately. Stockfish is saying, I'll try to complicate things, because if the game becomes too easy to play, then of course black cannot do anything with both of this rook. So that's why here Stockfish is trying to keep now the queens on the board, and of course this pawn is weak anyway. So we have bishop to f3, rook takes e5, queen to c1. Now again, Stockfish is not trading off more pieces, is complicating things further, but now queen to g1 here by clarity, occupying of course first of all this weak dark horse. And of course white would love to cement the position, maybe with the move knight to d4, but notice even if that happens, still c5 is working. So white has really a tough time where to go with the knight. If you play knight to e3, then again it will be twice attacked maybe by the heavy artillery by both of these rooks. So white cannot really play an optimal setup here. That's, I think, that bothers now white in the continuation of the game. We have rook to e8, not allowing knight to e3. We have queen to c5, and now rook to e6, simply getting the rook on a better square, and of course trying maybe to shift it here, also attack this position. Here bishop to d5, Stockfish is giving up the pawn, but now the queen is pinning the bishop to the queen. Here we have b4, and now rook to e2, and that's the move that I think Stockfish has been waiting for, occupying the second rank. Although Stockfish gave up the pawn on d5, but the bishop was controlling the square e2. Now Stockfish has finally some attacking chances, has, I think, good opportunities with both of these rooks on the 7th rank. We have queen to c6, trying of course to do something here around the square a6, but now rook to e7. Very good move also here by Stockfish. You cannot pick up of course the piece, because then the bishop on d5 is saying. We have bishop to b3. The queen is also stuck to the defense of the g2 pawn, so that's why Stockfish is regrouping again, is trying of course to connect now this other rook on the second rank and put more pressure against the g2 pawn. Knight to d4, rook to e3, bishop to d5. We have g6, rook to g1, and now rook to f6, simply attacking now further the queen. We have queen to c5, rook to d3, putting more pressure here again, also against this pawn on c3, which becomes now the main object of black's attack. We have c4, and now Stockfish plays a beautiful queen to e3, is pinning now the knight again to the queen. Here we have knight to c6. Now finally Stockfish takes, but it's a different story now, because Stockfish can actually grab a pawn here, and even if you play here bishop to c4, then rook to c3, you have to step back or maybe protect it. But then look at this rook is coming, you have to retreat, and then if you lose this pawn here, actually black is much better. So that's why after bishop b takes c4, we have a rook to c1. Stockfish continues with c3, tries of course to keep now the extra pawn on the board. Knight to b4, not allowing this pawn to be pushed, and also protecting now here this bishop on d5. We have now rook to d2. Here we have rook takes c3, and now a5, trying of course to kick away the knight from the defense of the bishop. But clarity calculated also everything in a good way. Knight to d3 disconnects now this rook from the attack against the bishop on d5. We have rook to f1, king drops back, and now king to g7, of course including now the king into the game. This is now the fully endgame stage. The king has to of course participate also in the attack. After king to g7, we have now the move a4, f5, and now Stockfish is showing actually the main plan now of this particular endgame. Stockfish has still this 3 versus 2 situation on this side of the board, and has to push there, has to create of course a passer with the support of the rooks, with the support of the king. There has to be done something here on this side of the board. So bishop to c6 by clarity. Stockfish continues with an improvement of the king, of course, simply gets the king further, and now we have bishop to b5, f4, knight to e5, rook to a1, and now first of all the check, king drops back, but now again Stockfish connects every pawn here on this side of the board, and it's of course trying again to push the pawns further. We have now knight to f2. Stockfish is of course building this battery, not allowing anything here on the second rank, and forces basically again a reaction here by the king on g1. Rook to c2, attacking now the pawn. This move is actually very important because it makes now White's light square bishop even much worse. Now look at this. White's light square bishop is always stuck to the defense of both of this pawn on the pawn on a4, but also the pawn on a6. So the bishop is just a part of the pawn chain. Very important move, I would say, because we're now in the endgame stage, and everything that you can complicate for your opponent, because now you see this bishop is not participating. It's almost like Stockfish is playing the position with up the exchange with two rooks against the rook versus knight. So a very important attack to force the reaction here with the move c6. We have now rook from a to b2, h4, rook to a2, h takes g, and now g3, trying finally to clear everything here on this side of the board. Clarity doesn't want to, of course, tolerate any activities with this mobile pawns. We have f takes g3. Now comes knight to e4, attacking now both of these pawns, but rook to c1 first forces actually now trades of rooks, because you cannot cover with the bishop here, because you get g2 and you lose the piece. So this is not working. So that's why you have to cover with the rook. Stockfish trades off now the rooks, king to f1, and now g2. Stockfish has now this very dangerous pass pawn, which is of course bothering White. White would love somehow to fix the position, to somehow get everything compact, somehow get the position maybe where the knight is here, where the bishop is maybe protecting both of these pawns, but the knight maybe could be here. But you are worrying, of course, about these passers on the g file, and the king of course will be included into the game after a couple more moves. The king will participate in the game for sure after move g2. That's why king to g1, you see Clarity has to now stay with the king very passive on the first rank. King to g6, we have now knight to c3, attacking now the rook drops back, and of course getting the king closer. We have now king takes g2, but Stockfish has still this other g pawn, and okay, Stockfish lost the pawn, but now the king is much closer to the action. The king is very advanced and can of course support the further progress of the g pawn. We have king to f2, rook to a2, king to f3, g4, attacking now the king drops back in, now g3. Look how advanced this pawn is, and as I mentioned, this bishop, although you have a bishop on the board, it's still stuck to the protection of both of these pawns. Incredible technique, I would say, here by Stockfish 16. So we have king to g1, king to h3, knight to f4 first to check. Again, Stockfish is trying to get a new square. A couple of repetitions we have here, but now finally king to e3, played by Stockfish, improving simply the position of the king, and of course trying maybe to get it here, pushing maybe somehow the pawn further, and also maybe deliver some dangerous checks. We have knight to e6. Stockfish finally pushes the pawn further. You see, you cannot include the bishop into defense. That's the issue here. We have bishop to c4. Clarity is desperately trying now to get finally the bishop into the game, and here Stockfish played, I think, an amazing idea. Stockfish plays now rook to d2. It's not rushing with any moves with the rook. It's not taking this pawn, because if that happens, actually I think after bishop to d5, the bishop will finally participate in the game. That's now the huge problem. Then after something like rook to a1, we can pick up this one, and here also my Stockfish engine at home says that this should be an equalish position, because now finally White can control maybe with the knight and also with the bishop. This advanced pawn will eventually also get the king closer. So better choice here really by Stockfish is to play rook to d2, because the king is then again far away from the action. The position is really stretched all over the board, and the knight is again also not participating in the game. It doesn't have so many good squares, so very interesting position. You cannot also play something like knight takes c7, because it will simply attack the bishop. We can also go here, maybe something like this, then you can maybe try check. But look at this, after king to g3, there is always the problem of a check here on the back rank. So obviously game over again also here for White. So after bishop to c3, as we mentioned, rook to d2, Clarity cannot take out this pawn on c7, play now bishop to b3. Stockfish improves now the position of the king. We have knight to g7, and now rook to d3, finally attacking the piece. We have bishop to c2, rook to d5, we have knight to h5, and now king to e3. You cannot pick up here this pawn because you get the check on d2, and then you lose the bishop. Knight to f6, we have now rook to d6, and now after knight to e8, Stockfish again attacks now the knight. You cannot attack, you cannot pick up the pawn here on c7 because after rook to c6 you would lose also here one of these pieces for sure on the c file. So after sorry, let's go back here after knight to g7, and as we said, rook to c6 that Stockfish played. We have bishop to b3, rook to c5. Here you cannot even deliver a check. Here a new attack by Clarity. Stockfish delivers now a new check, and now simply pushes the pawn further. Here Clarity has to now give up the knight for a pawn, and I think we can agree that this is now completely winning endgame here for black. Of course, Clarity is battling. Stockfish is playing first of all with the king towards the queen side. The cool part is that in this position you cannot, of course, participate with your king here, because then you get rook to e7. The bishop would be lined up on the e file, so you could lose the piece. After bishop to g4, Stockfish simply goes with the king further. Bishop to d1, rook to c1, attacking first the piece. King to e1, and now king to c3. Sort of a Zugzwang position, forcing now reaction, forcing now a move. King to e2, the only move that prolongs the game for white, but now a beautiful rook to b1. You don't have any good squares for the bishop. You have to play now this one, and Stockfish simply played king to d3, forced now the retreatment here by the king. The bishop is not protected anymore, but Stockfish is not rushing even in this position. After king to e1, rook to a1, again the same pattern. Now Stockfish finally grabbed the bishop here, and in this position the Clarity chess engine resigns. So remarkable game, I would say, with every aspect of the game. Great opening theory, great tactics. We saw risky lines still, I would say, giving up two minor pieces for the rook and the pawn, but then also an incredible endgame technique. Restriction, great restriction by the rook and the king against these two minor pieces, keeping the bishop always occupied on b5. We saw that the bishop was always part of all the pawn chain, so incredible technique again by the strongest chess engine in the world, by Stockfish 16. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed a lot interesting ideas of the Lopez theory. If you want to see more beautiful positional and sharp tactical chess like this, check out our commented chess games played by computer series. Here's the link of our playlist, and if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.